Ever since Mario's switch to 3D in Super Mario 64, the franchise has had an odd obsession with paintings, and just paint in general, to the extent that almost every entry in the series since then has had some kind of focus on paint. In 64, paintings are used as the main level select, acting as gateways to other areas and worlds. In Sunshine, Isle Delfino gets completely covered in paint and Mario has to clean it all up. In Luigi's Mansion, a group of ghosts get imprisoned in side paintings as well as Mario himself. In Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, Mario gets sealed inside another painting. In Luigi's Mansion 3, everyone gets sealed inside paintings. The plot of Paper Mario Color Splash revolves around paint. In Odyssey, paintings work similarly to how they did in 64, acting as pseudo-fast travel between kingdoms. Bowser's Fury sees the return of several paint-based plot elements from previous games. Mario Paint exists. But something that I've never seen anyone talk about is why? Why is the Super Mario franchise so obsessed with paint? And not just any paint. Every time paint has appeared in the series, it has always possessed some kind of magical or supernatural quality. And today, I'm gonna figure out just where exactly it's all coming from. Hi, and welcome to my first theory video. I've been noticing Mario's not-so-subtle running theme of paint-based plot lines for a long time now, and I finally decided to try and piece it all together. I've done my best to analyze every game in the series that features paint in some kind of prominent way, and after literally weeks of struggling to figure it out, I think I've finally deduced what's really going on here. But before I start, if you notice anything information-wise in this video being wrong or missing, by all means, correct me in the comments. I am in no way perfect, nor is this theory, so if you hear me say something that's just straight up incorrect, please call me on it. Now, without further ado, first, let's talk about the games where paint specifically appears in the form of framed paintings, as opposed to just loose puddles on the ground. These games include 64, the Luigi's Mansion trilogy, and Odyssey. Shockingly, there's literally zero information on the paintings in both 64 and Odyssey. They never explain what they even are, where they came from, or why they function like portals. Seriously, they leave you completely in the dark on this and just expect you not to question it. I managed to find 64's manual on Nintendo's official website, and even that didn't have any information on the paintings. I couldn't find anything in the DS remake either. Also, something unrelated that I'd like to bring up on the next page. Break stroke? You mean breast stroke? Were you that scared to use the word breast in official Mario media? You know, a completely normal piece of human anatomy? I found a different version on Internet Archive, and they spelt it correctly there, so I have no clue what the hell happened in the website's version. Anyways, let's start with Luigi's Mansion, considering that's where most of our evidence and clues are found. As far as I'm aware, across the series, we only ever see paintings come from two individuals, Egad and King Boo. It should also be mentioned that there is a third character by the name of Vincent Van Gogh who possesses the ability to bring his artwork to life, but he has legitimately less than 5 minutes of screen time and barely has any relevance or lore behind him. So, Egad. There is a weirdly large amount of evidence that most, if not all, of the paintings across the franchise come from Egad. For starters, the Portrificationizer, Egad's main invention from Luigi's Mansion. Egad explains that ghosts are invisible, so in order to see them, he captures them and uses the Portrificationizer to, quote, press them into visible forms? That's it. He collects ghosts, which, by the way, is literally kidnapping, and sends them through the portificationizer to turn them into paintings. By the way, I don't think he ever explains why he does this. It's really creepy when you try to look deeper into it. It's the equivalent of trophy hunting, but with people. King Boo does something similar, but instead of hunting for sport, he hunts purely based off of
bloodlust.
In Luigi's Mansion, King Boo finds out about Egad's kidnapping of ghosts and uses his portificationizer in reverse to set all of the ghosts free, which leads to Egad tasking Luigi with recapturing them all, including King Boo. They make it seem like King Boo is the villain here, but he technically freed a bunch of hostages and fought for his own freedom. Moving on, King Boo takes advantage of what he learns about the art of sealing innocent people inside paintings and uses it to seal Mario within one. And as soon as he does that, he suddenly gains an obsession with paintings even bigger than Egad's. Seriously, every time this guy is on screen in the latter two Luigi's Mansion games, he is constantly talking about sealing people inside paintings. Throughout Dark Moon, we see paintings scattered everywhere in Evershade Valley with no explanation, and seeing that both Egad and King Boo are living in Evershade Valley during the events of that game, it's safe to assume that between the two of them, the paintings had to come from one or the other. Luigi's Mansion 3 is a little easier to figure out, considering Egad is trapped in a painting himself for an unknown amount of time, so it's almost inevitable that all of the paintings around the Last Resort Hotel came from King Boo, being that it's implied that he's been staying in the hotel. Among the entire trilogy, there's a decently large amount of evidence that a majority of the paintings seen throughout the series come from Egad and King Boo. And I know what you're thinking. Okay, what about 64 and Odyssey? We see paintings scattered all over the world in Odyssey. When, how, and why would Egad or King Boo put paintings around the world? Plus, more importantly, we only ever see Egad and King Boo make paintings that are specifically for trapping people. What evidence do you have that they made the paintings in 64 and Odyssey, which function more as portals than prisons? Well, in Luigi's Mansion 1, Egad specifically says that he traveled the world in his search for ghosts, and we actually see that Egad's obsession with paintings goes beyond his trophy hunting in Super Mario Sunshine. In Sunshine, we see Bowser Jr. flaunting his new paintbrush, which he uses to pollute Isle Delfino with some form of magic paint. And it's shown that the paint can act as portals to different places on the island. And who is explicitly explained to have given Jr. the paintbrush?
This is my magic brush. When I draw with it, all my wishes come true. A strange old man in a white coat gave it to me. A strange old man in a white coat?
Egad built the paintbrush, the very paintbrush that has the ability to create portals. If you combine that with the fact that Egad has traveled the world, then it's very possible that Egad used the same technology to create the portal paintings in 64 and Odyssey. And if any of them for some reason weren't made by Egad, then they were probably made by King Boo, considering he literally is magic, and probably has the ability to make portals in the exact same way. So there we have it. Egad and King Boo are behind all the franchise's paintings. But that's only one part of the puzzle. They may have made the paintings, but what exactly is this magical paint that Egad uses, and where did it come from? That leads us to the next part of the theory. Now that we've gotten the paintings out of the way, let's talk about the games where paint appears in the form of puddles and pools as opposed to framed artwork. These games include Sunshine, Paper Mario Color Splash, and Bowser's Fury. I already brought up Sunshine briefly. Mario and friends go on vacation to Isle Delfino, only to find that Bowser Jr. has used a magic paintbrush to destroy the island's environment and framed Mario for it. Now, Mario has to spend his vacation cleaning up all of the paint and catch Jr. at the same time. You'd think this game would have more than enough information on the source of the paint, but no. Quite the opposite, actually. All we ever see is that Bowser Jr. has been spreading paint around the island, and that Egad gave him the brush. That's literally all the game tells us, which is admittedly very strange. I mean, 64 and Odyssey simply featured paintings as a part of their gameplay, but Sunshine's plot is basically about paint, and yet it never even tells us where it comes from. And I know what some of you are thinking. What are you talking about? The paint is coming from Bowser Jr.'s paintbrush. And to that, I say, paint does not come from paintbrushes. They're simply the tool used to move the paint to the canvas. Meaning, Bowser Jr. had to be getting the paint from some kind of consistent source in order to spread it around the island. And while I don't have any actual evidence to support this claim, I think it's fair to assume that Egad gave Junior the brush as a part of some kind of experiment. So even though we never actually see him in Sunshine, he was probably somewhere close by supplying Bowser Jr. with more paint. What other explanation do you have for the fact that Flood, who was also made by Egad, is found right in front of one of Bowser Jr.'s paint puddles? Egad was observing the entire thing, probably from within one of these buildings. So that means that instead of trying to figure out how Junior's paintbrush works, all we have to deduce is where Egad gets the paint in the first place. And if that information isn't in Luigi's Mansion or Sunshine, then where exactly are we supposed to find that out? Bowser's Fury? No, definitely not. But we are definitely going to circle back to that one. I checked every game in the series that has any sort of paint in it. I searched them all, and I managed to find the one place where we actually see the source of it all. I kid you not, this is the one time and place where we ever see the paint actually coming from somewhere. This may be one of the most important parts of the entire Super Mario lore, and it only ever appears one single time. You may be wondering what I'm talking about. You may be wondering where in the Mario series do we actually see the source of the paint. You're gonna hate me for this, but all of our answers lie in Paper Mario Color Splash. The plot of Color Splash is weird, to say the least. Borderline disturbing. Mario and Peach get sent a postcard from a place called Port Prisma. Except it's not a postcard, it's a toad that's been drained of all his color, leaving nothing but a blank white husk. So Mario and Peach set off for Port Prisma to find out what the hell is going on. It's established that Port Prisma is a tourist destination, with its main attraction being 6 entities known as the Big Paint Stars. Mario and Peach are introduced to Huey, a sentient paint can who's responsible for guarding the Big Paint Stars, only for him to realize that the Big Paint Stars have gone missing, and asks Mario to help him track them down. Eventually, the pair find out that Bowser was behind the whole thing, and team up to stop him. At the end of the game, it's revealed that Bowser was actually innocent in the whole thing, because he had been possessed and manipulated by a batch of black paint that had messed with his mind. Huey frees Bowser of the black paint's control, and flies away somewhere to dispose of it, never to be seen again. And they all live happily ever after, at least until Origami King. This game is actually pretty silly and doesn't usually take itself that seriously, but the moment you try to analyze things from an in-universe perspective, things get quite creepy real fast. Toad being drained of his color was probably quite horrific in-universe, and that happens dozens of times throughout the game. But what I find creepy are the Big Paint Stars themselves. There's surprisingly not that much information on what the Big Paint Stars even are, but what we do know is that they are sentient beings who are not only made entirely of paint, but can produce an infinite amount of paint. There's one for each main color of the rainbow: red, yellow, blue, purple, orange, and green, and they all live at Prisma Fountain, which is located at the center of Port Prisma. And that's all we really know about them. However, this line from Huey sticks out quite a bit to me. Remember that fountain in the center of town? You know, the one where I was taking a nap? Well, it's the prime source of paint for all of Prism Island. We've got 6 big paint stars hooked up to that thing, and they'll put out as much paint as you like. He says that Prisma Fountain specifically supplies Prism Island with its paint. And he never says the big paint stars. He just says 6 big paint stars, which implies that there may be more of them in the different regions of the Paper Mario world, supplying the rest of the planet with its paint. Although it is implied that they are quite rare, considering Peach and Toad don't know what they are. Even though it's never really brought up in the other Paper Mario games, Color Splash heavily implies that paint is an incredibly precious resource to the paper people, as paint is heavily implied, basically confirmed, to be everyone's life force. In fact, Huey specifically compares his paint to blood multiple times. The big paint stars are beings that are made entirely of blood and other vital things to the paper people. The people of this world rely on them to consistently supply them with the very thing that their bodies need to live. They're basically gods. And that is where Egad gets his paint. If you take into account Egad being a scientist who loves studying supernatural things with almost zero regard for the people around him, the fact that he is obsessed with paintings and artwork, and the fact that he travels the world for his research, I think it is very possible that during his travels, Egad stumbled upon Port Prisma, or perhaps some other place that has paint stars if there are indeed more of them, and used them for his research. That's what he was testing with Bowser Jr.'s paintbrush in Super Mario Sunshine. He was testing the capabilities of the paint stars. That is why the paint that Egad uses in Sunshine and 64 and Odyssey have supernatural qualities, because it's not normal paint. He got it all from a group of blood gods. And I know what you're all thinking right now. That's ridiculous. The paint stars only ever appear in the Paper Mario series, never in a mainline game. There's no way that Color Splash is canon to the rest of the franchise. And while that is admittedly a pretty good point, I have one massive piece of evidence that just might prove, or possibly disprove, my theory. Mario and Luigi Paper Jam. A game in which it is explicitly confirmed that the Paper Mario games canonically exist as a parallel universe that exists within a book which resides inside Peach's castle. Now, admittedly, the lore of Paper Jam is not explained well. Where did the book come from? Why is it just randomly inside Peach's castle? Why have we never heard about this before now? But I can take advantage of the poor explanation to insert my own speculations. Jokes aside, my personal interpretation of this is that the book that houses Paper Mario's world is a well-known heirloom that has been in Peach's family for generations. That would explain why no one really questions it, and also why such a powerful item would just be gathering dust in Peach's library. This could lead to 2 possibilities on how Egad has access to the paint stars. 1, Egad knew about the book and had borrowed it at one point for research on the paper world. But that one admittedly doesn't really line up with the franchise's timeline. Or 2, considering there's a paper version of everything in the normal world, there may be another version of the big paint stars somewhere in the 3D world, and EGAD stumbled upon them during his travels. That second one seems a lot more likely to me. EGAD, a researcher of the supernatural who travels the world, stumbles upon the 3D world equivalent of the big paint stars and uses their powers in his research because of his love of artwork. It all just makes sense! But that's not where my theory ends. While I have solved the mystery of all the paint and artwork around the Mario universe, there's one more piece of the puzzle that I have yet to talk about. And if I'm right, then Mario's world is in real danger. The black paint. The black paint is one of Mario's strangest recurring characters, playing the role of main antagonist in both Color Splash and Bowser's Fury. It's admittedly a little difficult to take seriously, debuting in a game that doesn't take itself seriously, but by the time it returns in Bowser's Fury, it's suddenly gained an odd, intimidating aura. In both games, Bowser is treated like the villain, but in reality he's being controlled by the black paint in both instances. Color Splash's plot from Bowser's perspective is funny, for one, but it also gives us a bit of insight into the black paint. Bowser travels to Port Prisma and attempts to paint his shell rainbow-colored because, well, let's face it, I think we all want a rainbow-colored shell. He jumps into Prisma Fountain and begins rotating like a microwave in an attempt to mix the 6 paint colors into his shell. But he ends up unintentionally mixing the paint together and creates the black paint, which ends up taking control of him. From that point, the black paint does a lot of seemingly random things that make it a little difficult to identify what its actual goal is. First, it takes the 6 big paint stars and throws them to random locations on Prism Island. Then, taking advantage of the fact that it's in Bowser's body, orders the Koopalings to guard each big paint star and make sure that no one returns them to Prism Fountain. Then, the black paint orders Bowser's army to collect a bunch of paint from around Prism Island and mix it all into more black paint, which they then load into a bunch of bombs that they plan on setting off around the island. And then finally, the black paint takes Princess Peach hostage, which really does not make sense to me. Like, unless I missed something, Peach means nothing to the black paint. So, why kidnap her? Like, dude, just because you're in Bowser's body, it doesn't mean you have to involve Peach in your schemes. Jokes aside, take notice of the rest of the black paint's actions. It gets rid of the other paint sources and steals a boatload of paint from around the island with the intent to mix it all together. It's trying to make more of itself, and it wants to make sure that the only paint source around is the black paint's source. But that's the thing. The black paint has no source. The rest of the paint around Prism Island comes from the big paint stars. Each color has its own star. But the black paint doesn't have a big paint star. It was only created when Bowser started playing in the fountain. But wait, think about that for a second. The big paint stars make all the paint. The black paint has no big paint star. All the island's paint is created at Prisma Fountain, and Bowser created the black paint at Prisma Fountain. I think the black paint sees Bowser as its big paint star. And it's not that far off. The big paint stars are sentient beings who create paint of their corresponding color using Prisma Fountain to mix and contain it all. And that is exactly what Bowser is. The only difference is that the big paint stars are made entirely of paint, and Bowser is arguably organic. And that may be why the black paint envelops Bowser in the first place. It probably thinks that its big paint star ran out of paint and is trying to help, or possibly just trying to make Bowser look more like it. And that may also be why the black paint kidnaps Peach despite not knowing who she even is, because it's inside Bowser's mind, and it's just trying to do what its big paint star would want. That's why it uses Bowser's army to make more black paint, because if Bowser is the big black paint star, then the black paint probably sees his army as its own, and it's taking it upon itself to do exactly what a big paint star does: make more paint. Honestly, you could argue that the black paint isn't actually evil. It's just confused and trying to do what it thinks its job is. I mean, sure, it comes off as incredibly aggressive, but keep in mind that we really only ever see it interact with Mario. And if it's judging the world with Bowser as a filter, then the black paint probably despises Mario without even really knowing why. If the black paint were to interact with someone else, like for example Bowser Jr., it probably would have come off as kind and caring. And in that case, the only thing truly bad about it is the fact that it's toxic to everyone but Bowser, and is trying to make more of itself. I'm not kidding. In both Color Splash and Bowser's Fury, Mario acts as if he's gotten physically burned every time he touches it. It's never explained why it doesn't hurt Bowser, but if I'm correct and it believes Bowser to be its big paint star, then maybe it's somehow deliberately preventing him from getting hurt. Or maybe Bowser is just somehow immune to the effects because he created it. Either way, regardless of if the black paint is evil or benevolent, it's still incredibly dangerous to those around it, physically hurting anyone who even touches it. And if its ultimate goal is simply to make more of itself, then that automatically makes it one of Mario's most dangerous villains. Luckily, Mario and Huey stop it before it can spread any further. Like I briefly mentioned before, the game ends with Huey sealing all of the black paint within his body, and flies away somewhere to dispose of it. And that's the last time we ever see Huey. Although it's not the last time we see the black paint. I can almost guarantee you that Huey dumps the black paint in Lake Lapcat, the setting for Bowser's Fury. There's strangely not that much story in Bowser's Fury to begin with. The game's plot is almost entirely told through implications and clues. While taking a casual walk, Mario spots one of Bowser Jr.'s signature paint portals, except it's noticeably made out of black paint as opposed to the normal red. It suddenly grows bigger, causing Mario to fall into it and get transported right to Bowser Jr., implying that Jr. may have deliberately summoned him through the portal. Jr. explains that Bowser got covered in some kind of black substance and suddenly went berserk. He asks Mario to help him save Bowser, even though neither of them enjoy the idea of working together. In this game, Bowser is shown to have transformed into a godlike Titan, and just like in Color Splash, is completely covered in black paint. Throughout the game, you collect cat shines, and while it's literally never explained what the cat shines are, Mario and Jr. use the light that the cat shines generate to agitate the black paint and loosen its grip on Bowser. Eventually, the two of them gather enough cat shines to royally piss off the black paint, and after a few swift nosedives to the gut, Bowser expels all of the black paint from his body and transforms back to normal. Then everyone goes home, living happily ever after. I feel the need to mention that the game never actually says that the black stuff is paint, and only in the credits do they confirm that it is. It's explained via a series of drawings that were presumably made by Bowser Jr. In these drawings, it's shown that Jr. was messing around with the paintbrush that Egad gave him in Sunshine, dips it in black paint, and unknowingly draws on Bowser's body with it, unintentionally getting him possessed the same way Paper Bowser did. And you may be thinking, wait, doesn't that disprove the theory? How could this be the same batch of black paint from Color Splash if it was just Junior screwing around? Junior probably made this batch himself. And while that is a fair counterpoint, do me a favor and just look at Lake Lapcat. It is absolutely covered in black paint. If all of this was just Junior playing with the paintbrush, then he would have stopped playing after seeing it corrupt Bowser. There's no way Bowser Jr. single-handedly polluted the entire lake for no reason. I mean, in Sunshine, he did it deliberately to frame Mario, but Mario wasn't even at Lake Lapcat until after Bowser got possessed. So Junior had no motivation to pollute Lake Lapcat at all. Hell, I'm pretty sure these two were on vacation in this game. What I think happened is Bowser and Junior went to Lake Lapcat and the black paint was already there. They just found the lake like this, which led to Junior trying to play with it and kicking off the game's events. I think Huey came here after the events of Color Splash and just dumped off all the black paint. And you may be wondering how Huey came to Lake Lapcat if Color Splash takes place in a book that, as far as we know, is currently on a shelf in Peach's castle. How did Huey leave the book at all? And to that, I say, I have no idea. I have to admit, I've gotten evidence for most of my claims in this video, but the idea that Huey polluted Lake Lapcat with the black paint is purely speculation, and I'm just gonna need you to trust me on this one. Reaching back to my earlier point that the black paint sees Bowser as its big paint star, do you notice anything familiar about what Bowser is doing here? Whenever Bowser isn't active, quote-unquote, he becomes this weird spiky ball, slowly rotating and floating at the center of Lake Lapcat's black paint pollution. And while it admittedly isn't identical, it looks very similar to a certain group of stars at Prisma Fountain. Bowser is slowly becoming the big black paint star. If Mario and Junior had left him any longer, he may have fully transformed into a big paint star. And something else that I'd like to mention are these odd Luigis made of black paint. First off, it's quite interesting that the black paint is taking the form of Luigi when it never even sees Luigi in this or Color Splash. Even more evidence that the black paint is in Bowser's mind, and probably found out who Luigi was from Bowser's memories. And secondly, these paint Luigis do something very strange when they move around. They become these spiky spheres that resemble Bowser when he's in his big paint star form. In Color Splash, something the big paint stars do is create smaller versions of themselves called mini paint stars. It's sort of like reproduction via mitosis, and it looks very similar to what we see these black paint Luigis doing. Again, it's not identical, but it is very similar. And if Bowser is becoming strong enough to create his own mini paint stars, then that not only means that Bowser's metamorphosis into the big black paint star is almost complete, but it also means that the black paint is getting stronger. You'd probably think that the black paint stops being a threat after the events of Bowser's Fury, but even after you 100% complete this game, Lake Lapcat is still completely full of black paint. They just leave it there. I'm not joking. They literally never do anything about it, which is admittedly hilarious, but also terrifying? Because that means that this sentient, incredibly dangerous substance who worships Bowser is just casually chilling in the lake. And my biggest concern isn't about Bowser or even the black paint itself. My biggest concern is about Egad and King Boo. Considering Egad is a world traveler who regularly uses paint in his experiments, it's not that far-fetched that Egad could one day find his way to Lake Lapcat and get his hands on the black paint. If he begins experimenting on it, he could end up spreading it around the world with his paintings, or possibly even make it more powerful. And if King Boo follows him to Lapcat, just like we see him do in Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3, King Boo could use it in his own evil scheme, or possibly even deliver it right to Bowser, giving the black paint exactly what it wants. It might even make its way back to Bowser without King Boo, since we see in Sunshine that Egad isn't opposed to selling his inventions to the bad guys. And seeing as how Bowser's metamorphosis was almost complete in Bowser's Fury, if the black paint finds its way back to Bowser, he will fully transform into the big black paint star, and the black paint will gain the ability to create a literally infinite amount of itself, and the entire world will drown in toxic, burning paint. And that's not just a theory, because I spent weeks gathering evidence for this. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and make sure to get a hug today. Happy Halloween.